I am still shaking as I write this. Yesterday morning started like any other Sunday. My boyfriend Robbie, 25M, left for his morning shift at the auto shop where he works as a mechanic, and I, 25F, planned to spend my day off doing some Christmas preparation. Robbie and I have been together for 3 years and living together for the past year in a small but cozy apartment near downtown. I should probably provide some background about us. I met Robbie through my younger sister Sydney, 23F, at a friend's party. Sydney and Robbie went to the same high school and had stayed friends over the years. When Sydney introduced us, Robbie was immediately different from any guy I had dated before. He was kind, attentive, and genuinely interested in getting to know me. Our relationship progressed naturally, and within 6 months, we were officially a couple. Sydney was thrilled about our relationship. She often joked about how she was the best wingwoman ever and deserved credit for our happiness. We spent a lot of time together, the three of us, since Sydney and I have always been extremely close. After losing our parents in a tragic car accident 5 years ago, Sydney was all the family I had left. I practically raised her through her last years of high school while juggling college and a part-time job myself. Robbie was incredibly supportive during the tough times. He understood our close bond and never complained when Sydney would show up unannounced or when I had to cancel plans to help her with something. He became like family to us both. We even started talking about marriage recently, looking at rings online and discussing our future together. Yesterday morning, everything seemed normal. Robbie gave me a kiss goodbye before leaving for work at 7 a.m. He seemed his usual self, maybe a bit distracted but nothing unusual. I had planned to make Christmas cookies since Sydney was supposed to come over later to help decorate them. We do this every year, it's one of our sister traditions that we've maintained since our mom passed. I started my day by gathering ingredients for the cookie dough. While measuring out flour and sugar, I noticed our laundry basket was overflowing. I decided to multitask, mixing dough and doing laundry simultaneously. I spent the morning going back and forth between the kitchen and laundry room, mixing ingredients during the wash cycles and transferring loads between batches of dough. Sydney stopped by around noon as planned. She seemed a bit rushed and only stayed for about an hour, saying she had to get to work. I didn't think much of it at the time. She often picks up extra shifts at the cafe where she works. She saw me mixing dough and doing laundry, even joked about how domestic I was being. Everything was normal until last night when Robbie came home from work. I had already gone to bed since I had an early morning shift the next day. I was startled awake by Robbie roughly shaking my shoulder. At first, in my confused state, I thought something terrible had happened, maybe another accident like the one that took our parents. But then Robbie started yelling about how he had caught me cheating. I sat up, completely disoriented, thinking I must be having a nightmare. Robbie then pulled out his phone and revealed that he had set up an old phone in our living room to record any sounds while he was gone. My initial reaction wasn't even anger about being recorded. I was too confused by his accusation to process that violation yet. He played the audio for me, and all I could hear were normal household sounds, me mixing cookie dough, the washer running, me coughing occasionally, the sound of water running when I washed my hands, and the noise of me transferring laundry from washer to dryer. But Robbie was convinced he could hear what he described as heavy breathing and what he claimed was someone removing a condom. I was shocked and tried explaining everything I had done that day. I mentioned Sydney's visit, thinking that would help verify my story. I even called Sydney right then and there, despite it being almost midnight. She answered, sounding groggy, and confirmed everything, that she had stopped by while I was making cookie dough and saw nothing suspicious. Instead of believing us, Robbie became even more agitated. He accused Sydney of lying to cover for me, saying he couldn't believe she would stoop so low. He grabbed my phone and started going through it, finding nothing suspicious because there was nothing to find. Still, he kept insisting that the audio proved I was cheating. I started crying, repeatedly telling him that I had done nothing wrong. I reminded him of our whole relationship, our future plans, asked him why I would throw all that away. The more I tried to explain, the more frustrated he became. Finally, I pointed out how strange it was for him to secretly record me in our own home. I suggested that maybe he was the one hiding something, which only made him angrier. Robbie then announced he was going to stay with his friend Andrew. He threw some clothes in a bag while I sat on the floor of our bedroom, crying and feeling completely helpless. Before he left, he said he needed time to think about whether he could ever trust me again, as if I was the one who had broken trust by simply existing in our apartment and doing chores. I haven't slept since he left. I keep replaying everything in my head, trying to understand what normal household sounds could have been misinterpreted so badly. The feeling of being recorded in my own home without my knowledge makes me physically ill. Even if we somehow move past this, how can I ever feel comfortable in my own home knowing he might be recording me? This whole situation feels surreal. In 3 years together, Robbie has never shown this level of paranoia or distrust. He's always been caring and understanding. We've never even had major fights before this. I've never given him any reason to doubt me and have never cheated in my life. The worst part is being accused of something I didn't do and having no way to prove my innocence. I don't know where to go from here. How do you defend yourself against accusations based on the sound of cookie dough being mixed and laundry being done? How do you prove you didn't do something? The whole thing makes me feel crazy, like I'm trapped in some bizarre nightmare that I can't wake up from. Update: when it has been a week since Robbie stormed out after accusing me of cheating. The past 7 days have been a blur of sleepless nights and constant anxiety. Robbie hasn't been home since then, only sending occasional texts saying he needed space to think things through. I spent the whole week feeling devastated and questioning every moment of our relationship. Yesterday, I finally discovered the real reason behind his bizarre behavior, and I am still struggling to process the magnitude of this betrayal. I had spent most of the week barely functioning. Our apartment felt too quiet, too empty. Every time I looked at the living room, I wondered where exactly he had hidden that phone to record me. I couldn't focus at work, couldn't eat properly, and kept expecting to wake up and find out this was all just a bad dream. Yesterday morning, I ran out of basic supplies at home. I hadn't gone grocery shopping all week, surviving on delivery and whatever was left in the pantry. I decided to drive to the store near Sydney's apartment since it was usually less crowded than the one near me. As I was walking through the parking lot, I noticed Robbie's distinctive blue Honda Civic parked there. At first, I thought it must be a coincidence. Maybe he was shopping too. But then I remembered that Andrew, the friend he claimed to be staying with, lived in the complete opposite direction of this area. Something felt off about the whole situation. After everything that had happened, I decided to trust my gut and check on Sydney. I still had the spare key Sydney gave me for emergencies after our parents died. We had always kept spare keys to each other's places, just in case. As I approached her apartment door, I could hear familiar voices inside. My heart started racing as I recognized both Robbie and Sydney's voices, though I couldn't make out what they were saying. With shaking hands, I inserted the key and opened the door. The scene that greeted me felt like another punch to my already bruised heart. Robbie and Sydney were on her couch, clearly caught in an intimate moment. They jumped apart when they saw me, but it was too late. Everything suddenly made horrible, painful sense. Sydney started crying immediately, mascara running down her face as she kept saying she could explain everything. Robbie just sat there looking guilty, his shirt wrinkled and his hair messy. Through her tears, Sydney admitted they had been seeing each other behind my back for the past 6 months. The recording incident was their planned way to make me look bad so Robbie could end things with me without looking like the bad guy. I felt like all the air had been sucked out of the room. My own sister and my boyfriend had not only been having an affair but had deliberately conspired to gaslight me and make me question my sanity. Sydney went on to explain between sobs that she and Robbie had reconnected at a party 6 months ago when I was away visiting our aunt. What started as innocent catching up led to drinks, which led to more. They started meeting secretly after that, unable or unwilling to stop despite knowing how wrong it was. The worst part was learning that the whole cookie baking day had been orchestrated. Sydney had suggested I make Christmas cookies that Sunday, knowing Robbie would set up the recording. She came over briefly to establish her presence on the recording, making it easier to back up my story later when Robbie confronted me. They thought this would make me appear more credible when I inevitably mentioned her visit, only to have Robbie dramatically refuse to believe both of us. Robbie finally spoke up, his voice quiet as he admitted everything. He said they had been planning to reveal their relationship eventually but wanted to do it in a way that wouldn't make them look like the bad guys. The recording scheme was their way of creating enough doubt about my character to justify him leaving me. He claimed they were in love and hadn't meant to hurt me this way, as if that somehow made their betrayal any better. Sydney kept crying and saying she was sorry, that she had wanted to tell me many times but couldn't find the courage. She talked about how guilty she felt every time we had sister nights or family dinners, how hard it was to keep lying to my face. All I could think about was how she had watched me cry on the phone this past week, pretending to comfort me while knowing she was the cause of my pain. I stood there looking at the two people I trusted most in the world, feeling completely numb. The sister I had helped raise after losing our parents, the one I had sacrificed so much for, and the man I thought I would marry had betrayed me in the worst possible way. All those times Sydney came over to spend time with me, all the family dinners, all the moments we shared, everything felt tainted now. Without saying another word, I turned around and walked out. Both of them called after me but I didn't stop. I got in my car and drove home in a daze, barely registering the drive. Their calls and messages started flooding in, but I couldn't bear to read them. The weight of their betrayal was crushing me. 6 months. For 6 months they had been sneaking around behind my back, probably laughing at how oblivious I was. All those times Robbie worked late or Sydney was too busy to meet, everything made sense now. They had taken my trust and used it against me, deliberately trying to make me doubt myself with that recording stunt. I spent the night alternating between crying and feeling angry. The two people who were supposed to love and protect me had conspired to not just betray me, but to deliberately make me question my own sanity. I don't know how to move forward from this level of betrayal. Update 2. After finding out about their betrayal, I spent the next few days in a fog of grief and anger. I called in sick to work for a week, barely eating or sleeping. Their messages kept coming from different numbers and email addresses, but I deleted them all without reading. Yesterday, I finally snapped out of it and decided to take action. I texted Robbie telling him he had 2 hours to come get his stuff from our apartment or I would throw it all out. He tried calling immediately, but I had already blocked him everywhere except email, which I kept open only for necessary communication about moving his things and breaking our lease. Robbie showed up within an hour, without Sydney. I had already packed all his things in garbage bags and boxes, placing them in the hallway outside our apartment. I threw away all the small items and toiletries. If he wanted new toothpaste, he could buy it himself. When he tried to come inside to talk, saying we needed to discuss things properly, I refused to open the door. Through the door, he kept saying he wanted to explain everything and that he still cared about me. I stayed inside and watched through the security camera as he loaded his things into his car. His friend Andrew came to help him carry the bigger items. I heard Andrew asking him what had happened, and Robbie just said I had overreacted about something. The audacity of that lie made my blood boil. I wanted to open the door and tell Andrew exactly what kind of person his friend was, but I stayed quiet. It wasn't worth the energy. After they left, I did a thorough search of the apartment to make sure I hadn't missed anything belonging to him. That's when I found another recording device hidden behind some books in our bedroom. The anger that surged through me in that moment was overwhelming. Not only had he recorded the living room, but he had also invaded my privacy in our bedroom. I smashed the device and threw it in the dumpster along with some photos of Robbie I found while cleaning. Sydney has been bombarding me with messages from different numbers since I blocked her original one. She even got our aunt involved, who called to tell me that Sydney was extremely sorry and devastated. I told our aunt everything that had happened, including how they had planned to make me look crazy with the recording. Our aunt was shocked and stopped defending Sydney immediately. The hardest part was deleting all the photos from my phone. 3 years of memories, family gatherings, holidays, and trips, all tainted now by their betrayal. I found myself looking at old pictures of Sydney and me from before all this, back when she was just my little sister who I thought would always have my back. The photos of us as kids, her high school graduation where I sat in the front row cheering her on, all the Christmas cookie baking sessions, those hurt the most to delete. I changed the locks on my apartment door even though Robbie had returned his key. I couldn't shake the feeling that he might have made copies, especially after finding that second recording device. I also canceled our shared Netflix and Spotify accounts that I had been paying for. It was petty, but it felt good to cut every single tie. Some mutual friends reached out after hearing what happened. Most were supportive, but a few suggested I should at least hear them out because they seemed genuinely sorry. One friend even said that sometimes people can't help who they fall in love with. I blocked those friends too. Anyone who thought I should give a second chance to people who deliberately tried to gaslight me wasn't really my friend. Last night, I got an email from Robbie saying he had left some important work documents in the apartment. I knew this was just another attempt to see me. I replied telling him that I had thoroughly checked the apartment and thrown out anything I found. If he really had left something important, it was in the dumpster now with the smashed recording device. He hasn't responded. There's a strange sense of peace that comes with cutting toxic people out of your life, even if those people were once the closest to you. Every time I feel a moment of weakness or sadness, I remember how they plotted and schemed to make me question my own sanity. That's all I need to stay strong in my decision. Update 3. It has been 3 months since I cut both Robbie and Sydney out of my life. A lot has changed since then. I moved to a different apartment in another part of town last month. I couldn't stay in the old place where every corner reminded me of their betrayal. The new apartment is smaller, but it feels like a fresh start. Last week, Sydney tried to ambush me at my workplace. I was walking to my car after finishing my evening shift when I saw her waiting in the parking lot. She looked thinner than I remembered, with dark circles under her eyes. She started walking towards me, crying and saying she missed me, that she needed her big sister back. I walked straight past her to my car while she followed me, begging for forgiveness and saying she'd do anything to make things right. I got in my car and drove away without saying a word, leaving her standing there crying in the parking lot. Later that day, I informed my workplace security about her and showed them her picture. They were very understanding and assured me she wouldn't be allowed on the premises again. I also filed an incident report with HR just to be safe. Robbie made one last attempt to contact me through a mutual friend. He had apparently found some of my old journals and photo albums while unpacking at his new place. He wanted to return them, claiming they might have sentimental value to me. I told the friend to tell him to donate everything to Goodwill or throw it in the trash. I wanted nothing that would remind me of him or what they did to me. Our aunt called recently to tell me that Sydney and Robbie had moved in together. Apparently, they wanted me to know they were serious about their relationship and hoped I would understand someday. I hung up on her. The next day I sent our aunt a long email explaining that while I appreciated her trying to keep peace in the family, I never wanted to hear about Sydney or Robbie again. I told her any future attempts to pass messages between us would result in me cutting contact with her too. The new apartment feels peaceful now. No hidden recording devices, no lies, no betrayal. I bought all new furniture and decorated it completely differently from my old place. Some days are harder than others, especially when I see sisters together or when something reminds me of our parents. But I'm slowly rebuilding my life on my own terms. I deleted all my social media accounts and created new ones, carefully choosing who to add back. My circle is smaller now but more trustworthy. I lost some mutual friends in the process, but the ones who stayed have been incredibly supportive. They never mentioned Sydney or Robbie, and they respect my boundaries without question. Yesterday I received a wedding invitation from my cousin Emma. Sydney will obviously be there since she's family. After thinking it over, I decided not to attend. I sent Emma a nice gift and a note explaining my absence. She called me later to say she completely understood and supported my decision to maintain firm boundaries. She even offered to send me pictures from the parts of the wedding where Sydney wouldn't be present. During these 3 months, I've learned that having no sister is better than having one who could betray you so deeply. The same goes for relationships. Being single is far better than being with someone who could conspire with your own sister to make you question your sanity. Sometimes the family you're born with isn't the family you need to keep in your life. I know now that I deserve better than both of them. The pain isn't gone, but it's different now. Less sharp, more like a dull ache that I've learned to live with. I'm focusing on building a new life, one that doesn't include people who could hurt me so deliberately and deeply.